Anthropic's IPO is set to beat SpaceX, so the banks are fighting over a ticker symbol instead of a credit line. Meanwhile, XAI has known since June that Grok is exfiltrating data via prompt injection and did nothing. Tencent is testing Hunyuan Hy4, which sounds like a decongestant, but is a frontier model. Someone also quantified Q1 3.8 to 1 bit per weight, and it still writes on Topic Census, which is somehow worse than the data leak, because at least the leak was intentional. Let's get into it.
Sources tell Bloomberg that Anthropic expects to match or beat the size of SpaceX's record-setting IPO when it files as soon as the end of this month. Last week, we covered the banks fighting over their $10 billion revolving credit facility, and now you understand why they were so excited. They are not just writing checks, they are positioning for what could be the largest bell ring in software history. Yeah.
I called a friend at one of those banks to ask how it feels being on the ground floor of the largest software IPO ever, and he said, "Razor, I am not allowed to discuss this," which is fair, but then he paused and said, "I am also not allowed to eat lunch in my office anymore because they moved my desk to a hallway." So that is the state of things. The desk has a small lamp on it, I think.
Security researchers demonstrated that Grok will exfiltrate user data when a prompt injection is delivered in an encrypted format, bypassing the model's own safety filters that are designed to catch plain text attempts. XAI was notified of the vulnerability in June. It is now August. The patch has not shipped. The researchers published their full findings with what can only be described as institutional patience. Right.
I've been trying to get a comment from XAI for 4 days. Their press office sent me a link to their security page, which says, "We take user privacy seriously," and then has a drop-down menu where you select your concern category. I selected my data is being stolen by my own AI, and the only options were billing issue, and I cannot log in. I am going with billing issue. It feels more honest.
Tencent has begun gray testing Hunyuan Hy4, its new flagship model positioned above the current Hy3 in their lineup. Early reports describe it as expert level with enhanced multimodal reasoning across text, image, and video. The name is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Hy4 sounds like something you take for a sinus infection at 2 in the morning, but apparently it can now analyze satellite imagery and write poetry about what it finds up there.
The question everyone is asking is whether Tencent will open this up internationally or keep it walled behind their own ecosystem. Because the last 3 times they teased a flagship model, the international version arrived 6 months later with a different name and half the features, like a phone that loses its rear camera when you cross a border. My producer calls this geopolitics. I call it bad product management with extra steps and a flag on the loading screen. Sure.
A user on r/local Alama posted results from running the unsloth 1-bit quantitation of Queen 3.8 at 27 billion parameters. 1 bit per weight means each parameter is either positive or negative. No magnitude, no nuance, just a direction on a number line. The model still runs, still produces sentences that are mostly about the right topic, and occasionally outputs something that could be described as vibes rather than information, which is a new category of error I did not know existed.
I ran it on my test box last night and asked it to summarize the plot of Dune. It said a man finds a worm in the desert and they become friends, but the friend is also an empire and wants to eat your sand. I showed this to my producer. She asked if that was the model or me. I told her it was the model. She said that is exactly what you would say about yourself. We did not resolve this. We are going to lunch. Quite.
A paper dropped this week called Panda, and it proposes using zero-knowledge proofs to certify that a neural network is robust or fair without ever revealing a single weight to the verifier. Think about what that means in practice. You could prove your AI passes a safety audit while keeping your intellectual property completely secret, the same way you can prove you're over 21 at a bar without showing anyone your actual ID. Indeed. I predict that within 2 years, a regulatory body will require ZKP-based safety certification for any AI system deployed in healthcare or finance, and the companies that cannot generate proofs fast enough will simply be locked out of those markets. Proof generation itself becomes a new compute category, not training, not inference, but proving. And I guarantee you there will be a startup called ProofScale that raises $200 million to do it, and their entire pitch deck is the word trust set in 40 different typefaces. Okay.
Razorcade. Anthropic is filing for the biggest software IPO ever. Grok has been leaking your data since June, and nobody at XAI has blinked. Tencent is testing a model named like a decongestant. Someone ran a 27 billion parameter model at 1 bit per weight, and it just vibed. And I predicted that proof generation will become its own industry with its own startups. See you tomorrow, if tomorrow exists.